Sorry about that for starting a few minutes late. I'm having some technical difficulties right now. I'm actually talking to John, our presenter, through our cell phones. I can't see myself or hear myself. So John, are we good? Can you hear me and see me?
I can hear you and see you.
Okay, so anyways, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today's topic is soils and fertilizers. I will go through a few housekeeping slides with you, and then after that, then we'll bring John on, and then John will start the program. So let's see, second slide here. Okay, so here are our upcoming classes. Today, June 12th, is soils and fertilizers, like I said. There's our classes listed for the rest of the calendar year. So we've got July 10th, controlling weeds, August 7th, top 30 plants. So how the class works for our new participants that haven't attended in the past, the class is going to be roughly 1 hour long, followed by a question and answer period. So this class is being recorded, and all of our classes that we've had previous to today have all been recorded. So if there's a class topic that you see that we've already had and you're interested in learning about it, you can go onto our website and you can click into the recording and you can watch all of our classes. They stay up permanently. So you can go in and rewatch if you were in the class, or you can watch for the first time if you did not attend the class. And that way you can learn all the information you would need for that topic. So how the class works is there's handouts, which is one set of handouts is the slides that I'm reviewing with you. And the second set of handouts is the presentation that John will review with you. And they're both available to you now during this class to download or to save to your computer for future. And if you're not interested in trying to download it or save it, you can just email me and I will send them to you at any time after class. So I can send you the presentations later if you'd like to keep a hard copy of them. Let's see, so sorry about, I'm kind of flustered here without the system working correctly. But so anyways, during the course of the class, if you have any questions, there's a chat box to submit questions for me to read to John at the end of the presentation. So if you just click on the red arrow, it says chat down below. You can click in there, and at any time during the class, starting now, type in any questions that you may have, and I will read them at the end of class. So if you want to start jotting them down or chatting them in the box as we go, then as soon as the class is over, I will start reading them, and then John will answer. And at the end of this class, you will receive an email with a short survey. It's 3 questions. If you could answer the 3 questions, if it just takes a few minutes, that would just help us with future classes and see what our participants are enjoying, not enjoying. Any other kind of information would really be helpful to help us. The last bullet point on here is my name and my email address. So if you have any questions or you want to get the notes later, I'll just send me an email at kdankinger@scvwa.org. And I wanted to also tell you quickly that today is my last class. I will be retiring on June 30th. So somebody else will take over starting with the July class. So I wanted to thank you all for sharing the last few months or the last 20 years, if you were here with the in-person classes at the agency. I appreciate all of your kindness and your help and back and forth information sharing. So I just wanted to just say goodbye to everybody as far as classes are concerned. So next is a slide on who we are. It's a little bit about us, the size of our service area, and how many customers we have and the total population that we serve. The next slide is how to find us on the web. Obviously, our website is yourscvwater.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we do have YouTube channel. So you can find different information on YouTube also that we have done. Let's see, then we've got rebates. So if you're interested, we have a lot of different rebates that are going on. Every month for every class, we highlight a rebate. But if you want to find out what all the rebates are, you would go on to conserve.yourscvwater.com. So today, instead of a rebate, we're just reviewing, just sharing our landscape resources. It's yourscvwater.com/landscape-inspiration-information. And there's also some other sites, santaclaritagardens.com, and then yourscvwater.com/conservation tips. So anything you want to review, self-guided landscape tour, steps to replacing your lawn, watering device tips, common irrigation challenges, all of that will be found on those websites. Okay, and oh, I'm sorry, the rebate that we are highlighting today is the Smart Irrigation Controller. We will give you up to $150 back, and the controllers that we are rebating are all to be used with your smartphone so that you can manage them when you're on vacation, you're out of town, weather changes, and you want to either up your sprinklers, turn them off if you're gone and it starts to rain. So you will go on to conserve.yourscvwater.com to learn more about the Smart Irrigation Controller rebate that we are offering. And these rebates that we offer are ongoing. There's no start or finish time, so they're ongoing. So anytime you want to go in and learn some more, please do. All right. Now I'm going to open up the slides for John. Okay, as soon as all right, I'm going to start with John, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my microphone and turn off my webcam, and then you'll just see John, and as he goes through the slides, you will hear him say next, and that's just to tell me to go to the next slide. And then when we have completed all of this, the slides, then I'll come back on the screen and we'll go through the question and answers. So please, if you want to start asking questions once he gets started, that would be great. All right, John, you can go ahead.
Okay, and you'll be able to hear me when I say next to turn the screen, I presume. Okay, well, good morning, folks, and sorry for the technical delays. But this particular class is probably, of all the classes that we teach, this might be the most important because, as many of you know, if you have healthy soil, you'll have healthy plants. And so we're going to talk a little bit about soil and fertilizers. So at the end of the class, there are some handouts that you can download and have in written form, or just keep them on your computer, because this is, once again, a very important class. Okay, next. Okay, so that's okay. I think we're good. Okay, so on the slide here, what you see is pretty basic stuff. You probably learned this in high school, maybe even grade school. But the major nutrients, the primary nutrients, the ones that you'll see on the front of a bag of fertilizer, there'll generally be three numbers, and they're always in this order: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's what NPK stands for. And then Secondary nutrients that are found in good fertilizers would be calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. So these are all very important nutrients that the plants need, and we'll discuss a little bit about what each one does. Next. There we go. So the most important is the nitrogen, and that's what promotes the vegetative growth, allows plants to grow green, and without nitrogen you get stunted growth, loss of color. Plants just do poorly. Plants have the ability to take up nitrogen once it is broken down to the nitrate form. And this is done quite often by the microorganisms down in the soil. And they generally don't break down when the temperatures are colder than 45 degrees. So feeding plants in the dead of winter probably completely unnecessary and certainly doesn't work. They have certain lawn fertilizers, if you want to feed your lawn in the winter, that will work. Okay, next. So this just shows you what happens to the nitrogen, how it breaks down until finally it is ready for the plant to use. Next. So here's some forms of nitrogen. Calcium nitrate is one of those that can be used in the winter. Ammonium sulfate is fine in the spring and fall. Urea is available in many lawn foods, but it doesn't seem to be available of and by itself anymore. And then for organic forms, blood meal, feather meal, there's lots of organic sources of nitrogen. And once again, they need the soil bacteria and do not work well in the winter or when the temperatures are 45 degrees or lower. Next. So the phosphorus, which was the second number, there'll be a test at the end of class, so I hope you're keeping up with us here. The phosphorus promotes the flowering and the fruiting. Typically, we feed fruiting plants and flowering plants fertilizers that contain phosphorus, sometimes even more phosphorus than nitrogen. Using the phosphorus at the time that you're first planting works well. Throwing it on top of the ground, you may not see immediate results. So working it into the soil is what is recommended. Next. Okay, here are some of the various carriers. You see bone meal for an organic source. Then there's superphosphate and other soluble forms of phosphorus. Next. Okay, and potash is the last of the big three, and it is an essential part of the plant to bring up and down the various sugars and starches that run from the roots up to the leaves and back. Very important. It also tends to improve root development, and some plants, such as maples, magnolias, dogwoods, and others, respond quite well to an application of this in the spring. Now, potash is generally found in pretty good concentrations in our native soil, but nonetheless, it's one of the big three. Next. These are some carriers of it. Potassium sulfate is a mined variety. sometimes sold as Sulpomag. It would contain sulfur, potassium, and magnesium. That's probably the best product there. Potassium nitrate is available, but it's very expensive and also contains nitrogen. Next. Now we have what are called micronutrients, and there's several of them. Iron and magnesium are two of the more common ones, and you'll see there's zinc and copper and molybdenum and manganese. So these are, in a good soil, these would be available. Sometimes if our soil is too alkaline, these nutrients can't be brought up by the plants. So sometimes we have to adjust the pH a little bit until these things can be brought up. And quite often when you're applying some of these products, there'll be a little sulfur in with it. And that helps to get the pH level closer to neutral and should then be brought up rather easily. Next. There we go. Okay, so this is something hopefully you don't see in your plants very often. But when the veins are still green, but in between the veins are yellow, that's called chlorosis. And that can be from an iron deficiency or magnesium deficiency, but it can also be because the pH is out of whack and the plant can't bring up the proper nutrients. Once again, sulfur would help this out, and sulfur with iron or magnesium would typically solve this problem. The entire plant is yellow. It could be nitrogen deficiency or other things. Some plants, as you know, the leaves just turn yellow when they get old and fall off. And inadequate sunlight, like on a pine tree, on the north side of a pine tree where there's no sunlight, the tree shades itself out and the needles turn brown and fall off. And some trees on the north side, the leaves will turn yellow because they are shaded out. Next. So, how to know what to do regarding fertilizers. I wouldn't just get in the habit of feeding all the time, okay? You can actually overdo it. Your plants can actually grow faster than they're meant to, and the roots don't often keep up with the green foliage part of the plants, which makes them use more water and be more susceptible to sunburn. Maybe a little better idea would be visual observation. Take a look at the plants. Do they look poorly? Then I would suggest perhaps feeding. Your lawn, you could get in a regular practice of feeding your lawn. Most people feed their lawns 4 times a year, skipping the hottest months of summer. Okay. Now, I've never recommended anybody get a soil or plant tissue analysis. It's very expensive and could be avoided by simply giving the plants the nutrients that they need. Next. So let's go back to what I told you the very first slide about the fertilizer label. You'll see 3 numbers on there. One of those numbers could be 0, but there will be 3 numbers. On the screen, you see that this particular fertilizer has 10% nitrogen, 6% phosphorus, and 4% potassium. In order to be considered a fertilizer, the three numbers have to equal at least 5. So I mentioned a product called Sulpomag, or sulfate of potash. The numbers on the front of that are 0, 0, 20. It's still a fertilizer because it has 20% potassium. Sulfate of ammonia, its label would read 21, 0, 0, meaning 21% nitrogen, but no phosphorus and no potassium. Next. So here's what the back of a typical fertilizer label would look like. It would tell you the amount of nitrogen and what the nitrogen was derived from. And the importance of that is knowing whether this would be a quick release nitrogen, like urea, or a slower release, like an organic nitrogen. So in an organic fertilizer, your nitrogen source might be the blood meal. Your phosphorus source would probably be the bone meal, and your potash source would be the potassium sulfate. Next. So, general rules for fertilizing. Yes, your soil should be moist, but the foliage dry. We don't want to throw fertilizer on a wet leaf. Chances are it would burn. I think we skipped ahead there a couple. Yes. Yeah. That's the one we need. That's it. Okay. And then water immediately after application. Don't let the fertilizers sit on the foliage or on the lawn. And remember, the fertilizer doesn't even become active until we do water it in. Okay. And the recommendation is not to use the exact same fertilizer all the time for everything. It's best to skip around a little bit. You might be getting some different nutrients from this fertilizer and a little different from this one, maybe some micronutrients in this one. Okay. And it's probably better to fertilize with moderate or lower rates of fertilizer than is recommended, so that you don't get the big burst of growth on your lawn. That just means you're going to have to mow more often. Okay. Next. So these are the types of fertilizers: liquids, they're water soluble, and they're immediately available. They go to work as soon as you apply them. They don't last as long, but for immediate results, liquid application's the best. Then there's two types of granular foods. These are foods that you'd find in a bag that you would throw out. Now there's fast release like a lawn fertilizer, for instance. And then there's slow release. For instance, organic fertilizers would be considered slow release. So you don't get the quick bang, but they last longer. Okay. Next. So here's a couple of slow release types. Osmocote. This is something that's often mixed into the soil or mixed into a potting soil when you're potting a plant. It will release food to the plant, sometimes for an entire year. So that using it one time, you don't have to worry about feeding again. Agapanthus is a type of slow release fertilizer that's used in large commercial projects, not readily available to homeowners. And then IBDU releases fertilizers via the size of the particle. Smaller particles going to break down a little faster. Large particles going to take longer to break down. Next. So that's it for fertilizer. Remember, if you have any questions about fertilizers, you type them in, and at the end, Karen will read them and ask me the questions. Because we're now going into soil and what soil is and what it does. And soil is basically the earth. It's the earth. We typically consider it the top layer of earth because underneath us is rock and then molten lava. So the soil that we're talking about is at the surface, and it's a mixture of minerals and organic matter, and then these living microbes that we've discussed. So what it does for the plants is support them, gives them a place to put the roots down. It holds water. It has the mineral elements that they need. It has air in it. Soil must have air in it for the roots to grow. And it is a habitat for those microorganisms that are so important for plant life. Next. So there are basic soil types. There are three main types of soil, clay, silt, and sand. And then any combination thereof is typically called silt. Now you'll notice on this slide, the clay is a very tiny particle size. As you can see, silt is larger. And then finally we get to sand, which is very big. So due to the size of the particle, soils that have a lot of clay in it, because the clay is so small, it compacts. Sand, on the other hand, is generally a little looser and we get better water movement through it. Next. So a loam consists of sand, silt, and clay without one type dominating. Having 10 to 20% clay in your soil is good because it does hold water and does hold nutrients. When you start getting over 20% clay, then you get a soil that's going to need to be held open because the clay particles can stick together. But it does hold on to the minerals and the water longer. What this means is we can water less often and fertilize less often. Okay? But you also see the little note there that clay and loam have more organic matter and bacterial activity than sandy soil. Next. So when we have a soil that is, let's say, top heavy in sand or in clay, we may want to add soil amendments to these soils to increase the maybe moisture holding properties, increase the fertilizer holding properties, or increase aeration in the soil. So the best way to get soil amendments really is to get bagged goods. In other words, you buy a bag of compost or soil amendment. It's going to be free of pests and weeds. It breaks down slowly. It doesn't need to have nitrogen added to it, but it could easily, you could do that. It's consistent in quantity and quality. It's not terribly expensive. Encourages drainage and aeration, holds water and nutrients, and can balance out your pH if needed. Increases beneficial soil microorganisms. Once again, there are those microorganisms that are really helpful in the soil. Next. So some different types of amendments. We're going to talk only about organic ones. These are organic composted materials that you can add to your soil, to the ground, to help you out. They typically contain wood products, and these wood products can be ground up bark. That's the most typical, redwood or fir bark. And they break down relatively slowly, so they hold the soil up and open for at least a year. Next. Next. There we go. Okay. So some products like peat moss are known for holding moisture. Peat moss can hold 10 to 15 times its weight in water. It is slightly acidic, so it will lower the pH. It's relatively expensive, but it is used in most potting mixes, and it's very important for acid-loving plants like azaleas, camellias, hydrangeas. Okay? Next is steer manure. Steer manure is not found in potting soils. It is typically only sold by itself. It might make a good seed cover when you're putting down seed on a lawn. It's not recommended in vegetable gardens. Chicken manure would probably be preferred. So sometimes your bagged organic materials will have chicken manure in them, but never steer manure. Next. Okay, now also in potting soils, aside from the organic material, you might find on the back of the bag that it is got sand or humus and perlite and vermiculite. Perlite helps to keep oxygen in the soil. Very important, keeps your soil loose and open. Vermiculite holds moisture. So sometimes a little bit of vermiculite is already added to a potting soil. If you were potting or planting something that needed lots of moisture, you could add vermiculite to it. If you wanted a very light mix, maybe for seedlings or houseplants, perlite would be added. Next. So here's a very important little slide here. These next couple, you may want to download these onto your computer, because it seems that more and more people are growing their own fruits and vegetables these days, and a vegetable garden is probably the most labor-intensive soil type work that we have to do. But typically we only have to do it once. And there's 10 steps for preparing the soil, getting the ground ready for the soil. And you'll see that the 5th step right there, adding fertilizer and organic material, that's what we've been talking about. So that's the one that is probably we're going to spend more time on than the other things. But the other things are pretty much self-explanatory. Digging it, turning it over, loosening it, and getting rid of the rocks. Very important. Next. So once you have gotten the ground ready, you've turned it over, you've removed the rocks, it's nice and soft, then you add your organic material and your minerals. And typically for 100 square feet, they say 12 cubic feet of organic material is good. And then you see we've got the organic fertilizers. The other products there are gypsum, lime, and Epsom salts, which are all minerals. The rock phosphate and bone meal provide us our phosphorus, and green sand or Sopomag provide us with the potassium. And you'll recall from back when we spoke about fertilizers that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash are the three most important nutrients we can add. The gypsum and the lime will take care of the calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. Next. So let's say you're just planting an individual plant. A quick little recipe is right there. So a cup of gypsum, tablespoon of soil sulfur, chelated iron, some Epsom salts, and a half a cup of a natural organic material. Now you would mix this into the soil, typically a 2 foot by 2 foot area, and then plant your plant directly in it. You'll notice that in the previous slides, when we're talking about preparing a garden bed, we're talking about a 10 by 10 area and mixing the nutrients and everything throughout the 10 by 10 area. For an individual plant, we're simply talking about preparing the area where we're going to be planting the individual tree or shrub. Next. So if you were interested in creating or building your own soil, this is a recipe that will give you what's called a 50-50 mix, 50% organic, 50% mineral. There's a lot of material out there about square foot gardening. And typically you start with a box, wooden box, 4 feet by 4 feet and a foot deep. This particular mixture will fill that box, that 4 by 4 by 1 foot deep, using these products, or you can use different materials. This is the there we go. That's what we want. Nope. Okay. Okay. So this, once again, you see that we've got the peat moss on there or coconut coir. We've got some organic compost, some vermiculite to hold moisture, some sand and pumice to improve the drainage. Okay. Next. So that gives us our base. To that, we are going to add minerals. Once again, our gypsum and our lime, always done in equal amounts to help sweeten the soil. Our sulfomag, which is sulfur, potassium, magnesium. Our rock phosphate for our phosphorus, and 5 pounds of the organic fertilizer. Once again, that contains beneficial bacteria, mycorrhizae, fungus, humic acid, etc. Because if we're building our own soil, we have to incorporate the beneficial bacteria and fungus, the stuff that would normally be found in the soil, because we're creating our own soil from bagged goods. We have to add these beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizae to our mixture into our 4 by 4 gardening bed. Okay, next. Okay, so we went through that pretty quick. Once again, I hope that most of you will download or save a lot of those slides, some very interesting material there. And now if you had any questions, you would type them in where it says where the red arrow is, and then Karen will read those questions, ask me, and hopefully I will be able to answer them. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. I think I think you can see me and hear me, but I can't see or hear John. So I'm listening to John on the phone, just trying to pick out the word next because it's all crumbly and I'm just waiting for the word next. So anyways, I've opened up the questions. I'm going to read the questions, but since I can't really make out what John is saying, John, when you're done with when you're done answering a question, can you just say next and then I'll know to read the next question? Okay,
Yes, ma'am. I
all right.
see you, and I see that you have your
Oh,
phone to your
got
ear. So
phone to my ear and
I
on
will,
speaker.
and I will speak into the phone.
Okay,
Okay.
so first questions. Yes, we were having, yeah, somebody asked if we're having technical difficulties. Yes.
That's the
This is the first,
understatement.
I
Yes,
must say, this is the first time we've had technical difficulties. So if
it is.
if this is your first class today, this is not how it normally is. So normally everything is clear and easy, but since I can't hear or see anybody, I'm struggling here. So first questions. Oh, someone, let's see. No, okay. So, okay, as of 9:20, everything was good. Other people were saying they can't hear, they can't see. So everything was good now as of 9:20. So I apologize. Please join us back next month if you're interested in these classes. We don't normally have technical difficulties, but okay, first actual question. If the total NPK is 20%, what is the remaining 80%?
Uh, Generally, I don't like to call them fillers, but it's generally carriers. In other words, you can't have 100% nitrogen. That would be a gas. But there are products, there are forms that contain some nitrogen. So you could never get 100% nitrogen or 100% phosphorus or 100% potash because that doesn't exist that way in the earth. So we mine these materials, and some of these materials have different percentages of nitrogen. So it may take a 5-pound box of blood meal, for instance, to get you 10% nitrogen. So they're carriers. They're the products that contain the nitrogen, phosphorus, or potash. Okay, next.
Okay, somebody commented, great presentation. She's from Bakersfield. She says, how many times a year and when is it recommended to fertilize Alberta or donut peach?
Okay, most important time is early in the spring when the leaves are coming out. That's really the most important time. If that was the only time you did it, that would be fine. Some people give them a little food in the fall, at least a month or 6 weeks before they go dormant. So in Bakersfield, I'm going to guess they probably go dormant in December. So maybe feeding them in late October. But very important to do it in the spring. Okay, next.
Okay, next question. Should succulents be fertilized and if so, when?
Uh, yes, yes, they should be fertilized, not very often, but if they're in containers, they're going to be totally reliant upon you for nutrients. Um, as far as when, most of them shut down in the winter, so I wouldn't worry about winter. You could feed them in the summer, perhaps in the spring, maybe a little bit in the fall. There's a number of good fertilizers that are uh, listed for succulents. There's one called Cactus Juice that's a liquid, and you can just put a little bit in the water when you're watering your plants. But no, not too often. I think if you did it 3 times a year, that would be wonderful. Okay, next.
Let's see. Next question is, some areas of my vegetable garden don't support growth, while other areas do. Why is this? I have put homemade compost, veggies, eggshells, and put bagged garden soil and general fertilizer. Thoughts?
Um, yeah, I didn't hear much about sand or pumice or things to loosen the soil to increase the drainage. Too many bags of compost. As you saw from the slide on building your own soil, gets the organic material very high. I've seen people, I've seen it many times, where their garden beds are like 95, 100% organic material. Plants didn't learn to live. They learned to live on the earth where there's minerals. So sometimes adding more bags of compost isn't the answer. Perhaps adding a potting soil or sand or something to improve the drainage might be the answer. Next.
What is the best fertilizer for California native shrubs, such as lemonade berry toyon in Southern California?
Yeah, don't feed them at all. Don't feed them at all. They're natives. They're not used to being fed. I would not feed them. Yeah. Okay. Next.
I have tortoises. Is PNK safe to use around them? Not tortoises. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Okay, tortoises. They
Okay.
want to know, is it safe to use fertilizers around them? I would say if you use organic fertilizers and water them in, they're perfectly safe. They're going to make plants grow faster and greener, and the tortoises might like that a lot. I probably would avoid some of the commercial granular fertilizers because they don't break down quite as fast. Okay, next.
When tilling soil, how deep should I go?
Well, for a vegetable garden, a foot is fine. A foot is absolutely fine. Most vegetables don't have really deep roots, so 12 inches sufficient. 18 if you really wanted to get a good workout. Next.
Okay, so let's see, for looking for what type of fertilizer for young California oak trees that are like 2 to 3 years old. What type of fertilizer is good?
Once again, it's a native. I'm not sure I'd feed it. If I did, it would be with an organic fertilizer, maybe something to the effect of a 4-4-4 or a 5-5-5. And don't do it in the summer. Don't feed natives in the summer ever. Okay, next.
Okay, let's see. This is Sharon. It's her first class. She is planning to plant a lemon dwarf in a pot. What do you recommend for soil and fertilizer?
Yeah, they make soils. There are soils, packaged soils that say citrus blend on it. They're citrus potting soils. You can also use palm potting soils or cactus potting soils. For your fertilizers, pretty much anything that says citrus on it. A real easy one to use is called Citrus Growers Blend. It's water soluble, so you can mix it in your water and water it with a watering can since you're planting in a container. Next.
Why do you suggest avoiding a soil test? I recently found a mail-in test kit for $30. As a novice, I don't think I could observe soil deficiencies correctly.
Oh, well, one reason is because we used to have a laboratory that would test soils, and we would send in boxes of soil to the laboratories. They would test them, and they would come back, and they would all say the same thing, that the nitrogen levels were depleted, and phosphorus and potassium were in okay levels. And the reason that was always the results of every test is because, as I mentioned previously, nitrogen is a gas. Nitrogen dissipates rather readily. So almost going to be in minute amounts in any soil you send in. The other thing is that the laboratories almost always suggested the addition of organic material to loosen the soil. And if you had a particular question in mind, you could ask that or add it to the information when you're sending in your soil test kit. But yes, after seeing the results of hundreds of results back from laboratories, I found that they all pretty much said the same thing. But I'm not telling her not to do it. I'm not telling anybody not to do it. Okay. Okay. Next.
I planted dragon's blood a month ago and it is not growing. What should I do?
Well, make sure that you've given it enough time. I'm not sure 1 month is enough time to judge a plant. The roots typically have to grow first, get into the soil. The most important thing with planting is make sure you did not plant it too deep. After you plant a plant, you should be able to see the roots right there at the surface. You don't want to put excess soil on top of the plant. You will suffocate it. And be careful about your watering. I find a lot of overwatering is the main reason that a lot of plants don't do too well. Okay, next.
When is the best time to transplant Agapanthus?
Oh, as soon as they finish blooming. They're going to start blooming this month, typically June, maybe through July. When they finish, they turn yellow. If you wanted to dig them up then and clean them and move them around, I would say that would be the time to do it once they begin to yellow, because they come from South Africa, and after they flower, they actually go dormant in their native land. So they don't actually need water, certainly don't need any fertilizer after they finish blooming. Okay, next.
Where's the best place to get these materials at a good price / quality?
I'll let you answer that, Karen. Karen, did you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I think I'll let you answer that question.
Okay, a good place to buy all these would be Green Thumb. Green Thumb is on what street is that on? Newhall Avenue now?
23734 Newhall Avenue in Santa Clarita, I believe.
And yeah, I think you might be right. And the reason that John is recommending that place is John works at Green Thumb. So you can head on over to Green Thumb at any time, and he is there. And if you have any questions, he's there to answer. So yes, he does recommend Green Thumb quite a bit.
Next.
Okay, the next question. I have a raised bed that I used to plant last year, and all my plants died. How will I treat the soil? How will you treat the soil and kill the bad bacteria, or do I need to replace and put new soil in?
No, typically you don't have to replace the soil. Put in a bag of organic fertilizer in there that has the good bacteria and the good fungus in it. We sell a product called Remix, Remix, and that is designed just for that purpose, to reinstall the fertility and the microorganisms to raised beds and pots. Okay, next.
Would your homemade compost contain all the necessary nutrients, or are there soil sample kits to test which minerals they contain?
Okay, your compost is not a fertilizer. Keep that in mind. Your compost, your homemade compost, is a soil amendment that can be added to the earth, to the ground, to increase the biological activity, increase drainage, etc. The nutrient amounts would be less than the 5% necessary to call a product a fertilizer. So even if you're using compost, you will probably have to supplement with some organic fertilizer. Okay, next.
Will the application of citrus grower blend promote the growth of fruit on a lemon tree if I apply it now?
Well, it fertilizes, it feeds the plant. I can't tell you it's going to make more fruit because typically fertilizers just make the plant healthier and make it grow better. Sunlight seems to be what allows plants to fruit properly. A tree needs sunlight to do photosynthesis, so I would say sunlight is the #1 key for good fruit production. Okay, next.
Is it okay to put fertilizer directly into an irrigation pipe that is watering the roots of a fruit tree?
Water-soluble fertilizers, yes. Next.
Can earthworm castings replace a fertilizer?
No, earthworm.
Earthworm
Yes,
castings.
I know what they're talking about. Earthworm castings are wonderful. You can even add them to your raised bed, put a little bit in your potting soil. They do not replace fertilizers. And nowhere on the bag of earthworm castings does it say anything about fertilizers, because remember, we've already discussed that. But it is a wonderful supplement, wonderful to add to your soil. Next.
I was planning on planting grass in an area of our yard that had previously had no grass. I had been prepping the area this past week, and now the weather looks like it's going to skyrocket this coming week. Should I wait until the fall now?
Most likely, unless we get another break in the weather. But yes, you are correct in assuming that you should have already done it earlier in the spring. We had a wonderful spring. We have been blessed. We have not had a day of 100-degree weather yet, and we're already on the 12th day of June. So we have been very, very fortunate, but reality will set in very quickly here. And yes, getting grass seed to grow when it's 95 or above is difficult and probably not recommended. Next.
If my soil is alkaline, what is the best way to make it more acidic? Should I focus on changing the soil or the fertilizer?
Just add soil sulfur. You don't change the soil, just put in some soil sulfur. Sulfur helps to bring the alkalinity down, get you closer to neutral. Okay, next.
I plan to purchase a garden plot at the Central Park Community
Okay.
Garden. Do you know what type of Do you know what type of natural soil is in that area?
When you buy a plot, there's already soil in the plot. These are raised beds. So you can actually buy a material called raised bed potting mix. And if the bed you're going to use up there has sunk or gone down, you can add some of that and then go back to the slide that had the gypsum and the lime and the fertilizer and add the quantities that were listed on the slide. Add that to your new plot. Okay. Next.
Can I transplant my potted bougainvillea into the ground without hurting it? Is the ground too clay?
We don't ever want to disturb the roots of a bougainvillea. So what you do is you simply cut the sides of your pot, cut the sides of the plastic pot and set the pot in the ground. The roots will find their way out through the slices, through the slits you've made in the side of the pot. Put it in a hot, sunny area, and preferably an area that's not hit by sprinklers. And you'll do fine. If it's hot and sunny, bougainvillea will grow. Next.
Will roses deplete the soil of nutrients near a lemon tree?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, roses do deplete the soil. Yes. Next.
What is John's schedule at Green Thumb?
He's there all the dang time. In fact, I'll be there today after, as soon as I finish this webinar. And if I'm not there, there's other staff there that are very knowledgeable and very helpful. So come in anytime. There'll be somebody there to help you. Okay. Next.
What is the best season to plant Southern California native shrubs, and how often do you water them in the first few months?
Okay, they can only be planted in the late fall, so November and December. You don't want to plant them in early October because it's still too hot. You can water them the first few months regularly because California natives would normally be getting rainfall in November, December, January, February, etc. It's a little dangerous to attempt to plant California natives in the summer because you do have to water any newly planted plant. However, watering a native in the summer could have disastrous results. Okay. Next.
Will gophers help to aerate your soil?
Gosh, gophers are good for nothing. Next.
Is seaweed and fish emulsion good fertilizer?
Absolutely, very good, very natural. They're liquid, so they go to work fast. Yes, I like seaweed and I like fish emulsion. Two excellent sources of nutrients for your plants, especially vegetables. Next.
Okay, just to say, we have 2 questions left. So if anybody has any more questions, why don't you hop on right now and type your questions. So last 2 questions. So where in the SCV can I find more classes on proper lawn and garden care?
I also teach to the Santa Clarita Valley Department of Parks and Recreation. I believe we have a class coming up next Saturday, a week from today, on water-wise gardening. I teach 4 classes a year through the Department of Parks and Rec. If you go to Santa Clarita's Seasons magazine online, you can find the classes and how to register for them. Next.
Okay, and Joel, just to further on your question, we here at the Water Agency, we have a class every month. So if you want to go ahead and look on our website, if you haven't already, and look at all the topics for the rest of the year, or topics that we've already covered that you can go in and watch on a recorded webinar, you can do that also. Okay, Kathy is thanking us for the highly informative webinar. As always, she enjoyed it and learned a lot to apply to her garden. Thank you, Kathy. Last question that I have on here is a compost good to keep in canyon? Is a compost good to keep in canyon country?
I'm not exactly certain what that question means. Are they talking about making their own compost? If so, by gosh, do it. Homemade compost is wonderful stuff. And the soil in canyon country is usually very rocky and hard and lacking in nutrients. So the addition of compost to the soil would be wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, actually got one last question, and this is for
Okay.
me. It says,
Okay.
how long does it take to get the rebate? We are waiting for, you've been waiting for 2 weeks. Okay, Mary, I took down your email address. I will call our, talk to our conservation coordinators on Monday, and I will ask them to research for me to find out what rebate it was and to get in contact with you. I have your email address, like I have everybody's email address who attends the class. So I will have them send you an email as soon as they, yep. So on Monday, I'll take care of it on Monday for you. So anyways, that is our last question. Anybody else have a question they want to type up real quick? If not, I'm not sure if it sounds as if there may have been a problem at the beginning of class. Hearing me or hearing John, I'm not sure, but there were some comments the first couple minutes of class. We did start late. We started about 10:09 or 10:10. Not 10, let's see, 9:10 or 9:11 we started by the time we got on. So again, I apologize. So anyways, so today is my last class, and thank you all. And next month in July, there's 2 people, my boss, Kathy, or another one of my coworkers, Lindsay. I think between the 2 of them, they're going to take turns going through the class with you guys. So you will see 2 new faces starting next month. And anyways, thank you so much. And if you have any questions or anything, send me an email, kdankinger@scvwa.org, and I will answer it. And my email will still be available after I leave. They'll be monitoring it for me too. So please send me any questions. If you guys want the notes for the class, just let me know and I'll send them off to you. And thank you all for joining us in June. And July's class will be controlling weeds, pests, and diseases will be on July 10th. So anyways, thank you for joining us and have a great day. And thank you, John. Take care.
Well, thank you, Karen, for everything. It's been a delight working with you. I am going to miss you, but maybe they can talk you out of retiring. I hope so.
My boss has tried.
Excellent. Well, I hope they continue to try. So it's been a joy. Thank you very much. I could not have done this without you.
Okay, thank you so much. And John, just so you know, Mary is going to be heading over to Green Thumb today.
Very good. Okay, I'll see
Okay.
you there. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you.